Autonomous transformation, creating a more human future in the era of artificial intelligence. This video is based on key insights from the book Autonomous Transformation, Creating a More Human Future in the Era of Artificial Intelligence by Brian Evergreen. Introduction. In this section, Brian Evergreen explores the potential of technology, especially artificial intelligence, to shape a better future. He emphasizes that technology, while powerful, requires careful direction to ensure positive outcomes for society, work, and the human experience. Evergreen introduces the concept of autonomous transformation as a means to achieve a more human future through technology. This involves addressing why many AI initiatives fail, fostering collaboration between experts, and ensuring that technology empowers workers rather than displacing them. He highlights the importance of aligning technological advancements with human values to create a future where technology serves humanity's best interests. A key theme is the definition of a more human future, which Evergreen describes as one where future generations are safe, healthy, educated, connected, and empowered to create value. This vision includes ethical choices, cultural appreciation, and the ability for individuals to fulfill their potential. Evergreen stresses that without purposeful direction, technology will perpetuate existing inequalities. He advocates for a proactive approach to problem-solving, as traditional methods are insufficient for leveraging new technologies effectively. He also introduces profitable good, an equation balancing profit with positive human impact. This concept suggests that businesses should consider talent preferences, market demands for social responsibility, and the benefits of partnerships based on shared values. The author argues that profit is a neutral tool that can be used for greed or altruism. He supports that every organization, including nonprofits, relies on profit to function. Profitable good aims to steer organizations toward using profit in a way that benefits society. He also clarifies that profitable good is not just an end goal, but an integral component of every step in implementing AI and related technologies. In real-world examples, Evergreen mentions the development of technology to reduce carbon emissions in buildings, which benefits both the environment and the company's bottom line. Another case is the use of robotics in the U.S. fishing industry to improve efficiency and create domestic jobs. These examples illustrate how technology can be applied to create positive social and economic outcomes. Ultimately, Brian Evergreen's perspective emphasizes the need for leaders to actively design a future where technology enhances human well-being. By focusing on profitable good, organizations can harness the power of AI and related technologies to build a more equitable and sustainable world. Chapter 1: Reformation, Transformation, and Creation, Defining Autonomous Transformation. In this section, Brian Evergreen defines autonomous transformation not as a process of full automation leading to job elimination, but as a shift in jobs that increases the autonomy of human workers. It's about empowering humans with more independence in their roles, which becomes possible through the collaboration between human and machine autonomy. The transformation involves redesigning products, services, processes, and organizational structures by converting both analog and digital processes into autonomous ones. This approach aims to ensure that technology enhances human experiences and benefits the communities the organization serves, leading to profitable outcomes and sustainable value creation. Brian Evergreen explains that the labor market can potentially transform, creating new roles that elevate humans from repetitive tasks to more creative and strategic work, like stewardship. This shift is crucial for organizations facing economic pressures, the need to strengthen supply chains, and the challenge of retaining expertise. Autonomous transformation allows organizations to achieve more with their existing resources, safeguarding business operations and stabilizing employment. Brian Evergreen distinguishes between digital transformation, digital reformation, and autonomous reformation. Digital transformation involves completely reimagining processes and assets using digital technology, as seen with Netflix's shift to streaming. Digital reformation, on the other hand, enhances existing processes by converting analog to digital without altering their fundamental nature, such as online airline booking. Autonomous reformation improves existing products, services, or processes using autonomous technologies without fundamentally changing them, illustrated by Bell Flight's AI-driven drone landing system. There isn't a definitive example of autonomous transformation that has reshaped the market yet, but ventures like Amazon Go, which personalizes the shopping experience and automates the checkout process, are steps in that direction. Brian Evergreen also points to the Internet of Things, which can automatically purchase products based on consumer needs, potentially transforming advertising. The author discusses how autonomous technologies can extend human capabilities, particularly in healthcare, where digital twins of patients could enhance medical professionals' ability to diagnose and treat patients more effectively. Brian Evergreen emphasizes that creation, reformation, and transformation are processes that can be combined to achieve a desired future state, citing the smartphone as an example. The smartphone's development required innovations across various fields, illustrating how these processes work together to produce breakthrough outcomes. The author uses the story of the Jacquard loom to illustrate the impacts of innovation. The invention led to job losses, but also laid the foundation for computing and computer programming. Brian Evergreen points out that organizations need creators, reformers, and transformers to fully realize the potential of new capabilities, highlighting that organizations will need each of these functions to achieve cross-organizational objectives. Brian Evergreen introduces the concepts of job protectionism, job fatalism, and job pragmatism, advocating for job pragmatism, which involves balancing support for existing jobs with promoting innovation and economic growth. The author stresses the importance of incorporating workforce transformation strategies into broader organizational strategies to preserve expertise, foster loyalty, and promote a positive organizational culture. The author cautions against pursuing autonomy at all costs, as it can detract from essential human experiences. The author argues that human connection is vital, and organizations should focus on using autonomous technologies to amplify human abilities in areas where connection matters most. Brian Evergreen also discusses a pivot from organizational survival to the betterment of the human experience by re-examining an organization's role within the broader system, and how digital and autonomous capabilities can enhance its ability to deliver on its core value proposition, leading to societal improvement and organizational success. Chapter 2. What does it mean to be human in the era of artificial intelligence? In this section, Brian Evergreen explores the question of what it means to be human in the age of artificial intelligence, emphasizing that the relentless human search for meaning is what sets us apart. He suggests that technological advancements force us to constantly reevaluate our definition of humanity, especially when machines begin to exhibit skills previously thought to be exclusively human. Brian notes that new technologies that correlate to exclusively human skills trigger fear or skepticism because society treats the definition of being human as a checklist. Brian argues that true human experience is not just about experiencing certain events, but about how we assign meaning to our lives, which a computer cannot replicate, regardless of what it experiences. The text highlights that society is standing at a great era of transformation because of more complex and powerful technology than ever before. He claims that addressing the existential question of what it means to be human in this era will lay the foundation for culture. Brian states it is not in the scope of this section to provide a definition of what it means to be human, but rather to highlight discussions and propose frameworks for clarifying the distinction between humans and machines. Brian then delves into the pain of uncertainty, citing a study that links uncertainty to physiological stress and decreased performance. He argues that in the age of AI, this uncertainty has significant costs for society, employees, and leaders, making it a business imperative to create clarity. Drawing from Microsoft's transformation under Satya Nadella, Brian highlights the leadership principle of create clarity to address the psychological need for certainty, especially during times of change. He also stresses the economic and moral reasons for leaders to communicate clarity in the face of technological disruption, pointing out that the desire for certainty can lead to fiscal opportunities, but also misplaced trust. Furthermore, the chapter examines the distinction between humans and machines through the lens of capability and consciousness. Brian uses examples such as manufacturing plants and fraud detection systems to illustrate that machines excel in speed, precision, and data processing. However, he contrasts this with human ingenuity, citing the story of a violinist who solved a potato chip manufacturing problem by finding the resonant frequency of the grease. This underscores the human ability to imagine and create, something that machines, even with advancements like DALL-E 2 and ChatGPT, have yet to replicate at a human level. Brian explains that AI is based on large sets of representative data and examples, so the AI has only reached new heights of elegance when it comes to pattern recognition and speed. Finally, Brian addresses the distinction of consciousness, referencing René Descartes' cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He asserts that machines lack existential self-awareness and instinctive desires, as highlighted by John Searle's Chinese room argument. While acknowledging concerns about the potential risks of machine consciousness, Brian suggests that its development is unlikely due to a lack of economic viability and the high likelihood of existential risk. Chapter 3, Our Inheritance. Humankind is currently grappling with significant existential and social challenges. As science and technology advance, problems are becoming increasingly complex, with societal systems straining under pressures like war, climate change, and social inequalities. The term systemic has become prominent, highlighting the interconnected nature of these issues. Traditionally, there has been a separation between social and organizational systems. However, the information age has blurred this divide, as people increasingly demand transparency regarding the origins and impacts of products and services. This shift has made initiatives that solely benefit organizations at the expense of society unviable. While some initiatives aim for neutrality, there is a growing movement toward using resources to create positive societal impacts. Brian Evergreen recalls an experience with a chocolate company vice president aiming to eliminate child labor from the supply chain. Despite good intentions and influence, the complexity of the supply chain, with multiple layers between the company and the farmers, hindered their ability to address the issue effectively. This situation exemplifies how systemic challenges can impede even the most well-intentioned efforts. Many initiatives fail due to systemic challenges rooted in the Industrial Revolution. Organizations have built upon systems from that era, characterized by a mechanistic worldview that breaks down work into basic units. This approach treats workers like machines and prioritizes efficiency over human considerations. The Industrial Revolution-era systems remain intact at the organizational level, such as organizational structures and departments within universities. This focus on incremental improvements within existing systems is insufficient to address today's complex challenges. Furthermore, the management systems of the Industrial Revolution are incompatible with technological advancements like AI. Taylorism, or scientific management, emphasizes finding the best way to perform tasks through analysis and simplification. While revolutionary at the time, this approach can dehumanize work by treating workers as cogs in a machine, removing autonomy and creativity. Examples of tools that Taylorism contributed to management thinking illustrate its pervasiveness in corporate culture even today. Process analysis, process mapping, elimination of waste, process optimization, knowledge transfer, measures of efficiency, process documentation, and best practices. The application of the scientific method to our thinking processes has become so pervasive that it influences how organizations brainstorm, the criteria by which ideas are selected, the design of experiments, and measurements of effectiveness. It is comfortable because it is objective and abdicates risk. The scientific methods focus on measurement over impact can be detrimental, especially in organizations operating mechanistically. This can lead to situations where individual teams achieve their goals without contributing to the overall organization's success. Analysis, while important for explaining what is happening within a system, cannot explain why. Diagnostic analytics, which combines analysis and synthesis, is necessary to provide understanding. Brian Evergreen points out that many organizations have invested in initiatives seeking to implement predictive and prescriptive analytics within their organizations to identify and understand things that their own experts do not understand about what will happen or what to do in the future, are exemplifying the art of the impossible and designing for failure. Brian Evergreen introduces the concept of data science Taylorism, where data science experts collaborate with managers to glean insights from data and assign tasks to engineers and frontline workers. This approach dismisses the expertise of those closest to the customers and processes in favor of data. This approach increases the social divide between technologists and domain experts, drastically reduces the likelihood of project success, and can be credited for a healthy portion of the 87% of machine learning models that never make it into production. Chapter 4, Maintenance Mode. In this section, Brian Evergreen explores the concept of maintenance mode within organizations and its implications for adopting advanced technologies like artificial intelligence. Maintenance mode, according to Evergreen, is a state where preservation and incremental improvement take precedence over innovation and transformation. He identifies 3 telltale signs: a focus on incremental improvements without system disruption, initiatives that improve individual functions without broader impact, and extremely low risk tolerance. Evergreen argues that organizations trapped in maintenance mode struggle to embrace emerging technologies because these technologies often require system-wide changes that threaten the stability of the existing system. He uses the utilities sector as an example of a heavily scaffolded system, where introducing change is complex and risky due to the interconnectedness of its subsystems and the potential for disastrous failures. This systemic resistance to change explains the limited meaningful adoption of AI and other advanced technologies. Brian Evergreen points out that organizations in maintenance mode often explore new technologies through pilots, which rarely lead to production due to a lack of rigorous justification. Another approach is to create dedicated teams to explore these technologies, but these teams often face internal resistance and lack of clear implementation paths, leading to frustration and leadership shuffles. He also notes that the intrinsic motivations of data scientists, who are often driven by breakthrough discoveries, clash with the organizational desire for low-risk, incremental improvements. This situation, Evergreen argues, creates a self-reinforcing cycle of negative outcomes, leading to skepticism towards technology and those implementing it. He emphasizes that technology is neither the sole problem nor the solution. Technology organizations that have leveraged advanced technologies in acts of creation have thrived, while those stuck in maintenance mode have struggled to grow. Brian Evergreen also addresses the disconnect between incentives and accountability, where executives are incentivized to maintain short-term profitability through maintenance mode, even though it is unsustainable in the long term. He highlights the focus on quarterly earnings calls, which prioritize financial performance over strategic investments in innovation. The author notes that system-wide changes are rarely introduced from within existing systems. He uses examples like American Airlines' online reservation system and the failures of Kodak and Blockbuster to illustrate this point. To overcome maintenance mode, Evergreen suggests that organizations should devote resources to both maintaining system stability and creating a vision for the future that is unconstrained by the current system. The key question should be, what ought to be? Rather than, where do we go from here? For individual contributors, Evergreen shares a story from his time at Microsoft, where his former boss, Jennifer Byen, encouraged him to focus on market impact rather than getting bogged down in metrics. He advises individuals to imagine the market impact they want to create and view metrics as milestones on that journey. If the desired impact is incompatible with the assigned metrics, it may be time to seek a new opportunity. Chapter 5: Requiem for the Industrial Revolution, Rehumanizing Work. In the world of classical music, epics have built upon the work of one another, evolving melodies, rhythms, and instruments through generations. Brian Evergreen notes that the Romantic era significantly impacted how we experience music, with performers interpreting music through their emotional connection. A shift so profound that even music from earlier eras is now often recast through this romantic lens. Before the Romantic era, composers like Johann Sebastian Bach were tradesmen, serving the church or nobility. However, the Romantic era elevated the artist, as exemplified by Beethoven's declaration of independence from his benefactor, emphasizing his worth through his own labor. This shift in worldview requires a magnitude of mindset change from leaders in the 21st century. As Brian Evergreen explains, because the Industrial Revolution has deeply influenced how we approach organizations and systems. Brian Evergreen argues that the Industrial Revolution has reached its logical conclusion, necessitating a shift toward a new way of thinking about and managing organizations. This transition is crucial as artificial intelligence highlights the need for innovative approaches and offers opportunities to enhance human capabilities and transform the nature of work. Drawing on Frederick Taylor's emphasis on the system over the individual from 1911, Brian Evergreen contrasts this with our current reality. Today, humans possess unprecedented knowledge and technological power, underscoring the potential to create a more human-centered future. Brian Evergreen asserts that this section will guide readers through disentangling from the Industrial Revolution and building a future based on profitable good. This involves a decisive, worldwide shift toward a new way of thinking about organizations, initiatives, teams, and systems. Chapter 6: The Problem with Solving Problems, Introducing Future Solving. In this section, Brian Evergreen addresses the pervasive problem-solving approach in organizations and introduces the concept of future solving as an alternative. Brian suggests that while problem-solving focuses on addressing current issues, it can lead to a fragmented and inefficient approach, as it is inherently directed at what you do not want, not at what you do want. Future solving, on the other hand, starts with envisioning the desired future state and then working backward to determine the steps needed to achieve it. Brian illustrates this with the example of a telecommunications company that was facing the end of support for its existing servers. Instead of focusing on the problem of updating the applications to migrate to new on-premise servers, the development team, when consulted, proposed re-architecting the applications and migrating to the cloud. This future-oriented approach led to significant improvements in performance and capability. Brian also touches on the limitations of relying solely on use cases, using the example of applying machine learning to drone imagery in agriculture. While the technology itself may be impressive, it may not align with the needs and perspectives of the farmers who would be using it. Brian emphasizes that agriculture organizations should focus on the role agriculture serves within its containing system, to have a conversation with a farmer about feeding the world within the context of two of their larger systems, society and the earth itself, and the changing climate conditions due to climate change. Labor shortages now that the internet has provided paths to digital jobs, and there is a declining interest in farming or the ever-growing global population. Placing pressure for more food despite fewer farmers, one can lay the foundation for a discussion about the future of agriculture in which farmers would participate. This orientation leads to investments focused on creating or improving parts of the broader agricultural system, improving the system at its function as a part of a broader system, feeding the world. A further problem of focusing on use cases occurs when clients are playing use case battleship, accumulating point solutions from different vendors that do not integrate well, leading to a bloated and disconnected system. Brian underscores the importance of organizational leaders pausing to reassess strategy when caught in the problem-solving loop. In essence, Brian advocates for a shift in mindset from merely solving problems to actively designing and building the desired future, as referenced to Dr. Russell Ackoff. That said, the righter we do the wrong thing, the wronger we become. When we make a mistake doing the wrong thing and correct it, we become wronger. When we make a mistake doing the right thing and correct it, we become righter. Therefore, it is better to do the right thing wrong than the wrong thing right. This long-term approach, he believes, is essential for organizations to realize their full potential and drive meaningful innovation. Chapter 7, Developing the Skill of Envisioning. Envisioning the future isn't some innate talent, but a skill that can be developed through practice, much like coding or project management. Brian Evergreen emphasizes that this process is deeply personal and somewhat vulnerable, requiring one to acknowledge the uncertainty of the future. It's about using imagination and acknowledging that you can't control what's coming. For organizations, it's crucial to foster an environment where traits like empathy and reason are valued alongside technical skills, allowing for more open and creative envisioning. Brian Evergreen introduces the concept of functional reimagining, which involves examining the role an organization plays within larger systems, like the market or society. For example, a team that delivers daily reports to leadership isn't just reporting, but rather informing decisions. Functional reimagining means understanding what information leaders need and how they best receive it. This could involve providing bulleted lists, offering in-depth analytical discussions, or creating self-service business intelligence dashboards. The goal is to better fulfill the core function within the broader system. Brian Evergreen also presents multiverse reimagining as a creative exercise. Imagine waking up in a parallel universe where your organization doesn't exist. You have the opportunity to build it from scratch. This process requires considering the organization's function within its systems and understanding the motivations and roles of the people involved. Once a future vision is developed, the journey of rediscovering the system's context and designing for the future can begin. Chapter 8, Systemic Design and the Lost Art of Synthesis. In this section, Brian Evergreen discusses how organizations approach the future, emphasizing the importance of systemic design and synthesis. He identifies 3 ways organizations move forward: passively observing, actively reacting, and proactively designing. Many organizations tend to react to changes, like investments justified by market conditions or competitors' actions. The COVID-19 pandemic illustrated this, with companies rapidly adapting to remote work. However, Brian Evergreen argues that truly successful organizations design their future, exemplified by Steve Jobs' development of the iPhone, which wasn't a response to competitors, but a vision for Apple's market leadership. Brian Evergreen highlights that design thinking workshops often define goals, but not the means to achieve them. Microsoft's transformation under Satya Nadella serves as an example of how changing the means of doing business can lead to success. He cautions against blindly following external advice, emphasizing the need for leaders to deeply understand their organization's business, culture, and technology. Real design requires a shift in thinking and working, not just financial investment. Instead of asking what the organization will look like in the future, leaders should ask what they want it to be. Thomas Edison's approach of setting directional milestones rather than focusing on immediate returns exemplifies this proactive approach. Brian Evergreen points out that many artificial intelligence initiatives fail because they are managed with a focus on short-term return on investment and designed for individual parts of a system rather than the system as a whole. He stresses the importance of systemic design, which involves understanding how each part of a system affects the whole, and that improving individual parts does not necessarily improve the entire system. He uses the analogy of building a computer with the best individual parts, which may not work as a cohesive system. The author emphasizes that initiatives should focus on re-engineering the interactions between parts of the organization, including teams, technology, customers, and partners. He mentions Raghu Athanaryanan's observation that many digital transformation efforts fail because they address problems one at a time, instead of building a transformation strategy at the board level. A system is also shaped by its matrix, which includes the cultural, social, and political environment. Leaders must be attuned to this and adjust the matrix to create a favorable environment for culture and value creation. Brian Evergreen provides an example of a technology project proposal that lacked input from someone with practical experience in the construction environment, leading to flawed assumptions. He highlights the importance of diversity of expertise, knowledge, and experience. Organizations can evolve by reacting to changes or by design. Brian Evergreen uses the example of return-to-work policies post-pandemic, where some organizations that quickly mandated in-person work lost talent to those offering flexibility. He encourages leaders to understand their organization systems, market, and value chains to design a sustainable future. Finally, the author discusses the importance of synthesis, which complements analysis. Analysis involves breaking down a system to understand its parts, while synthesis examines the system's role in a larger context. He illustrates this with the example of a bank, where analysis provides data on individual components, while synthesis helps understand the bank's function within the economic system and society. Synthesis helps understand whether a decentralized bank would better serve the function of a bank within the context of an economic system or society. In applying technologies, analysis reveals how the technology works, while synthesis informs how it improves the organization's ability to perform its core function. Chapter 9, The Organization as a Chessboard, Seeing the Pieces. In this section, Brian Evergreen uses personal anecdotes and business experiences to illustrate the importance of seeing the whole system, much like a chess player considering the entire board rather than focusing on a single piece. One key topic is identifying the pieces on the board when facing a problem. Brian describes an experience where a client wanted to build a platform using data from building management systems. Brian suggested reaching out to building management systems organizations to form partnerships, an option the client hadn't considered, highlighting the importance of identifying all possible elements. Another crucial topic is understanding leverage points and whether the pieces are movable. Brian shares the example of Henry Ford, who saw the potential for inexpensive cars to create a mass market, something others didn't believe was possible. Brian also notes Ford's failures in Fordlandia and his descent into anti-Semitism, where a lack of understanding of the broader system led to negative outcomes. The connected circles exercise, stemming from systems thinking, provides a framework for uncovering a system. Brian explains how to identify key elements, map their interrelations, and pinpoint leverage points. This exercise helps leaders and managers visualize the complex relationships within a system, whether it's a team, an organization, or a market. Brian uses the example of artificial intelligence, AI, to demonstrate this exercise. The unrealized economic opportunity of AI leads to investments, but failed AI initiatives result in skepticism and decreased investment. Identifying leverage points, such as preventing AI initiatives from failing, can lead to a cascade of positive outcomes, including job growth. Brian emphasizes that this approach is also valuable for individual contributors. He shares his personal experience of automating data entry processes and building a software application to streamline a cumbersome task, demonstrating how seeing the whole system can create new opportunities. Regarding the future of AI, Brian illustrates how the connected circles exercise can be applied to understand its complexities. Brian points out that the limited number of data scientists and the complexity of the field can hinder AI's potential. The exercise suggests that addressing these challenges, such as through data science boot camps or low-code platforms, can unlock AI's unrealized economic opportunity. Clover Imaging Group's fusion of AI with its core competency in picking and shipping, empowering individuals with disabilities, showcases AI's potential for profitable good. Chapter 10, The Organization as a System. In this section, Brian Evergreen emphasizes the importance of understanding organizations as interconnected systems, moving beyond individual disciplines to see how different parts interact. Brian recalls his experience in music, where individual excellence isn't enough. Musicians must blend their skills within the orchestra system. Similarly, Disneyland is presented as an example, where even if one aspect like new rides is improved, the entire system fails if employees are rude or inattentive. Fixing the system requires understanding all its components, including employee motivation, training, and management, not just replacing people. Brian highlights the shift from a mechanistic view of leadership, which relied on fear, to a social systems worldview, where empathy and belonging matter. Fear may ensure compliance, but it doesn't inspire the best performance. Great leaders, like orchestra conductors, inspire their teams to bring their best and harmonize as a unit. Brian explores intra-organizational systems, where leaders must manage interactions between teams and departments. A CTO, for example, must ensure that technologists work well with domain experts. At the manager level, leadership involves understanding each team member's motivations, skills, and how they fit into the team's social system. Brian provides an example of a manager reassigning tasks to motivate a board employee while engaging a team member seeking new challenges. In interorganizational systems, Brian shares a personal experience from a consulting firm. A colleague's political move damaged client relationships due to conflicting incentives. By understanding the system, Brian and his colleague brainstormed a solution that benefited both organizations, resolving the conflict of interest and improving overall profitability. Brian discusses industry-specific organizational systems, noting the unique nuances in sectors like finance, oil and gas, agriculture, medicine, utilities, and food. Even in manufacturing, information and operational technology organizations often have different incentives. By examining these groups through a systemic lens, manufacturers can find mutual benefits and improve interactions between these parts of the system. Brian concludes by underscoring the importance of understanding the cultural history and values of an industry when designing or redesigning systems. For example, the manufacturing sector's deep cultural history, from Alexander Hamilton's report on manufactures to the Industrial Revolution, shapes the industry. Recognizing these cultural elements is essential for technologists and industry professionals to unlock their shared economic potential. Chapter 11, Broken Systems. In this section, Brian Evergreen discusses the concept of broken systems within organizations and how they hinder innovation and value creation. He introduces the Hedberg strategy, where leaders become comfortable with inefficiencies rather than addressing systemic issues. This approach, while offering short-term gains, risks long-term organizational stagnation. Evergreen critiques the traditional project intake process in information technology, which focuses on addressing immediate problems with incremental solutions, leading to increasing technical debt. This process, designed to streamline operations, often fails because it doesn't consider the broader organizational system or the market's competitive landscape. The author argues that this system is geared towards maintaining the status quo, stifling innovation, and potentially incentivizing business units to bypass internal IT for faster solutions. Brian proposes reimagining internal technology organizations by drawing inspiration from consulting firms and product companies. He suggests structuring internal IT like an internal consulting firm, with incentives tied to project delivery, quality, and competitive bidding. The concept of the bench, where consultants await project assignments, is introduced as a motivational tool to encourage continuous skill development and client relationship management. By structuring internal IT organizations like external firms, it can drive focus on value creation. Alternatively, Evergreen explores mimicking product companies by measuring internal IT's success based on usage and subscription revenue. This model would incentivize business units to unsubscribe from services if they don't perceive sufficient value, fostering accountability. This chapter emphasizes how existing structures and processes do not have market competitiveness in mind, nor the broader organization's ability to create value in the market, which, in turn, decreases the likelihood that business unit leaders create partnerships. Brian suggests a third consideration when building internal IT organizations around intellectual property. He says that in cases where the development and deployment of new capabilities, which do not exist in the current market, align well with the core competencies of the organization, then they could be developed in-house, with the plan to commercialize and funnel profits back into the internal technology organization. The author also advocates for incentivizing technology team members based on business outcomes, such as customer satisfaction, and integrating them directly into business operations to foster empathy and understanding. Ultimately, Brian demonstrates the organizational context leaders and managers must transform in order to effectively embark on an autonomous transformation journey. He suggests that each suborganization within a broader enterprise can be similarly examined to reimagine the organization and create a social system that can advance toward a more human future. Chapter 12: Chaos, Noise, and Epistemology in the Digital Age. In this section, Brian Evergreen explores the complex relationship between humans and machines in the digital age, focusing on how we perceive and understand advancements in artificial intelligence. He begins with the well-known story of Garry Kasparov's defeat by IBM's Deep Blue in 1997, which many saw as a pivotal moment in the advancement of machine intelligence. However, Evergreen argues that such interpretations often fall prey to logical fallacies. One fallacy is the slippery slope, which assumes that a single step in technological development will inevitably lead to a negative outcome. Evergreen contends that recreating human consciousness is not simply a matter of accumulating use cases or systems. He points out that Deep Blue, while a phenomenal achievement in computer science, was specifically designed for chess and cannot be combined with other AI systems to simulate consciousness. Another fallacy is the non sequitur, where the conclusion doesn't logically follow from the premise. Evergreen illustrates this by highlighting how the speed at which machines analyze data is often misinterpreted. Just because a machine can analyze chess positions faster than a human doesn't mean it can understand poetry or become conscious. The author emphasizes that machines perform calculations based on human-programmed logic and rules, but they lack true understanding or the ability to venture beyond their programmed parameters. The third fallacy is the appeal to authority, where something is believed to be true simply because a credible source says so. Evergreen uses the example of Stephen Hawking's warning about the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. He urges readers to examine what such experts actually said and to consider their field of expertise. While Hawking's concerns are valid, Evergreen notes that he was speaking about full or artificial general intelligence, which doesn't yet exist and would require significant technological breakthroughs. Evergreen then shifts the focus to epistemology in the digital age, emphasizing the importance of critically examining inbound information. He uses Michelangelo's quote about seeing the angel in the marble to illustrate how our initial perceptions can be shaped by various sources, such as articles, conversations, and rumors. To avoid making decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information, he suggests two methods. The first method involves zooming out to see the whole picture. Using the example of IBM's investment in Deep Blue, Evergreen explains that the company's primary goal was to demonstrate computing capability and enhance its products and credibility. Similarly, DeepMind's achievements with Atari games and Go were aimed at showcasing their breakthroughs in reinforcement learning. These advancements are not necessarily part of a coordinated effort to achieve singularity, but rather demonstrations of corporate and academic prowess. The second method involves considering economic incentives. Evergreen provides a hypothetical scenario where different individuals, a professor, a vice president at an automation company, and an independent thought leader, write a paper on artificial intelligence. By examining their respective incentives, it becomes clear how these motivations can influence their message, regardless of its validity. Ultimately, Brian Evergreen argues that mastering epistemology is crucial for effective leadership and personal well-being in the human-machine paradigm. By avoiding logical fallacies, zooming out to see the whole picture, and examining economic incentives, individuals can gain clarity and confidence in their knowledge and decision-making. Chapter 13, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and the Factory Floor. In this section, Brian Evergreen addresses the divisions present in society, particularly within and across organizations, and also in the broader societal context due to technological advancements. The author points a significant divide within organizations, distinguishing between technology, business, and industry functions. This division is exemplified by the shift in influence where technology professionals have moved from support roles to leadership positions, influencing major business decisions. Brian Evergreen cites the example of shadow IT to illustrate how business and industry leaders sometimes bypass the IT departments to control their technology choices, which can harm the organization's overall system. The author further explains that a disconnect arises when technology leaders use their knowledge to mislead business counterparts. To counter these issues, Brian Evergreen suggests technologists should understand that their skills are valuable only when paired with solid business models and expertise. Brian Evergreen then shifts focus to the challenges faced when technology organizations attempt to partner with or sell services to other industries. The initial challenge is deciding the level at which to start the conversation and whether to approach the technology, business, or industry side of the client. Such decisions are influenced by the applicability of the technology, existing relationships, and the balance of trade. Brian Evergreen points out potentially harmful behaviors, such as excluding it from discussions or bypassing them altogether based on existing relationships. According to Brian Evergreen, business and industry leaders often rely on a small circle of trusted advisors, but struggle to find the right new advisors when needed. The author suggests a method called the economic incentive test, illustrated in data, to help business leaders assess the credibility and trustworthiness of potential technology advisors. This test involves presenting advisors with multiple diverse problem statements to gauge their approach and honesty, especially when their technology isn't a perfect fit. A scenario involving a fictional leader, Wei, and a consultant, Anders, demonstrates how Anders' approach to prioritizing value over immediate profit can build trust. Brian Evergreen broadens the discussion to include societal divisions, which are worsened by economic imbalances created by technology growth. The author suggests the digital divide, first identified in 1995, affects an organization's talent pool. Addressing this divide in local communities benefits the organization by developing local talent and improving its culture. The author uses Seattle as an example, noting the benefits children growing up there receive due to the presence of numerous technology companies. The author concludes that organizations have a symbiotic opportunity to contribute to the social good by helping to develop local talent. Chapter 14, The Multiplication of Expertise, a Leadership Imperative. In this section, Brian Evergreen emphasizes the critical role of leadership in fostering understanding and collaboration across diverse expert groups, particularly when navigating complex technologies like artificial intelligence. The core idea is that leaders must bridge the communication gaps between experts in business, technology, and specific industries to unlock innovation and drive organizational success. Brian highlights the challenge of semantic satiation, where repeated buzzwords like artificial intelligence lose their meaning due to overuse and inconsistent understanding. He points out that even when people use the same terms, their underlying understanding and assumptions can vary significantly, leading to confusion and hindering progress. This lack of clarity can be detrimental to organizations, and leaders must actively work to overcome it. However, simply asking experts to dumb it down is not the solution, as it can be disrespectful and ineffective. Instead, Brian advocates for finding a shared language that allows experts from different domains to communicate effectively. This requires intentionality and, often, facilitation by leaders who can understand and translate across different areas of expertise. To illustrate this point, Brian presents a series of examples involving leaders from different departments in a chemical organization. In each scenario, leaders are faced with a problem that requires collaboration across business, industry, and technology domains. The examples highlight the potential pitfalls of poor communication, such as asserting authority, using jargon, or focusing on individual goals rather than shared objectives. Brian introduces the concept of breaking down complex topics into inputs and outputs to create a common understanding. For example, a machine learning algorithm can be described in terms of its inputs, e.g., location data, and outputs, e.g., clothing recommendations, without delving into the technical details of the underlying algorithms. Similarly, a business process can be explained by its inputs, e.g., an organizational change, and outputs, e.g., a plan with guidance and training. Brian introduces a framework that categorizes inputs and outputs into 3 altitudes: universal, accessible, and domain-specific. He argues that organizations should start with the top-level, universal input and output as a baseline for communication, then drill down to the depth needed to inform decisions or provide awareness. Brian emphasizes that the responsibility lies with each individual to calibrate their communication to the most effective altitude for a given discussion. He provides examples of meetings where participants either fail to provide enough context or delve too deeply into domain-specific jargon, hindering effective communication and problem-solving. Ultimately, Brian asserts that leaders must master the ability to facilitate and develop common language between expert groups to empower the organization with exponentially more valuable ideas and solutions. This involves calibrating the altitude of the discussion, simplifying complex topics by breaking them down into inputs and outputs, and approaching conversations with vulnerability and consideration to build trust. In essence, this section argues that the future of AI and other advanced technologies depends not only on technical expertise, but also on leadership's ability to foster collaboration and communication across diverse teams. By breaking down silos and creating a shared understanding, organizations can unlock the full potential of these technologies and drive innovation. Chapter 15, From Data-Driven to Reason-Driven. In this section, Brian Evergreen explores the shift from data-driven to reason-driven decision-making in organizations, particularly concerning the integration of new technologies like artificial intelligence. Evergreen points out that while data-driven decision-making is valuable for incremental improvements and well-established applications, it falls short when dealing with innovative and emerging technologies where historical data is scarce. Evergreen uses the concept of organizational empiricism to describe how some organizations prioritize empirically proven data to such an extent that it stifles innovation. He argues that this approach, which demands empirical proof of future value, is a logical fallacy because you can't have empirical proof of something that hasn't happened yet. It leads to a risk-averse environment where organizations are hesitant to invest in high-value, complex initiatives due to the lack of readily available data. To counter this, Evergreen proposes organizational reasoning, which emphasizes the importance of human reasoning, logic, and the expertise of individuals within the organization. This involves starting with what is known and empirically supported, and then developing a series of logical inferences and hypotheses to explore potential paths forward. An organizational reasoning tree can be developed to visually represent the organization's strategy, assumptions, knowns, and unknowns, allowing for a more dynamic and adaptable approach to decision-making. For example, Brian Evergreen discusses a hypothetical scenario where a company aims to eliminate carbon emissions by 2030. Since there's no existing data to prove the effectiveness of proposed solutions, a reason-driven approach would involve examining current emissions, benchmarking against industry peers, and identifying potential methods for reduction. From there, the organization would develop theories and hypotheses about how to achieve the goal, creating a reasoning tree to guide decision-making and adapt to new information as it becomes available. Brian Evergreen posits that data-driven decision-making is foundational for any effective leader or manager, but it only allows for tuning and fixing that which already exists. In order for leaders and organizations to innovate and create, especially in the context of the unknowable, such as with new technologies, data-driven decision-making must be extended and augmented with reason. This is arguably a more scientific process than the established processes for data-driven decision-making, as it includes the process of asking questions and generating theories. Chapter 16: The Reformational Economics of Linear and Exponential Value. In this section, Brian Evergreen addresses the need to reformulate organizational economics in the context of autonomous transformation, focusing on the limitations of short-term, linear return on investment (ROI) calculations. Brian argues that this traditional economic paradigm, which demands immediate and measurable returns, inhibits long-term value and strategic investments, potentially leading organizations down a path of mere maintenance rather than substantial growth and innovation. As an example, Brian mentions that one organization required initiatives to demonstrate a return of 10 times the investment within 3 years, a condition that discourages investments in projects with longer-term payoffs. Brian highlights the importance of shifting from a purely data-driven to a reason-driven approach, advocating for an accounting framework that differentiates between investments in short-term and long-term value. This shift requires trust in human reasoning alongside computational analysis, enabling organizations to disentangle from the mechanistic worldview inherited from the Industrial Revolution. As an illustration, Brian cites Amazon, which operated for 9.5 years before achieving its first profitable quarter, demonstrating that significant value creation often requires patience and a long-term perspective. The author introduces the concept of linear versus exponential value, particularly in the context of technological capability. Brian points out that technological capabilities are interdependent, with initial investments laying the groundwork for future initiatives that may not be immediately apparent in ROI calculations. Furthermore, technological capabilities often span multiple functions and suborganizations, yet justifications are typically based on individual use cases within specific areas. Brian uses the hypothetical scenario of organizations A and B, which could both benefit from data science capabilities, to illustrate how separate investment justifications might be rejected despite the overall positive impact of developing the capability across both organizations. To facilitate a shift in this economic paradigm, Brian presents data, including the profit arc, to illustrate the potential conflict between maximizing short-term profit and ensuring long-term profitability. Brian uses the analogy of building a staircase to represent the need for organizations to buy the whole staircase when pursuing a desired future and a strategic transformation. Just as architects are not expected to justify the cost of each individual step, organizations should not be overly focused on the ROI of each individual initiative, but rather on the overall value of reaching a higher tier of value creation. This shift from analyzing individual steps to synthesizing a complete staircase is essential for justifying and accounting for investments in long-term transformational goals. Chapter 17: The Reformational Economics of Omission and Commission. In this section, Brian Evergreen addresses the critical yet often overlooked aspects of organizational decision-making, focusing on the balance between acts of commission, actions taken, and acts of omission, actions not taken. The author argues that traditional accounting systems primarily record acts of commission, leading executives to favor actions that can be measured, even if those actions are less impactful than the paths not taken. The chapter opens with the story of Blockbuster's missed opportunity with streaming services, illustrating how prioritizing short-term revenue, late fees, over long-term innovation, streaming, led to the company's downfall. Despite the disastrous outcome, the executive responsible for canceling the streaming initiative faced no personal repercussions, highlighting a systemic issue where failures of omission are not accounted for. Brian Evergreen points out that this imbalance nudges leaders toward a maintenance mode, where they prioritize preserving the status quo over taking risks and exploring innovative opportunities. While some leaders defy this nudge by championing their visions, they often do so at great personal risk, stepping outside the organization's formal accounting process. To address this issue, the author proposes accounting for both acts of commission and omission. He suggests that as decision-makers consider different options, all presented alternatives should be recorded. Regular reviews could then assess the impact of actions taken alongside the potential impacts of actions not taken, fostering a learning environment and improving the organization's overall decision-making capabilities. Imagine, the author says, if promotion decisions considered a leader's ability to discern strategic and tactical investments, including initiatives not funded and partnerships not pursued. From a systemic perspective, Brian Evergreen suggests this approach would encourage organizational reasoning, documenting why decisions were made to accompany the record of what decisions were made. This creates a history of the application of reason in the decision-making process. The author further explores the issue of outcome bias, where the outcome of a decision overshadows the quality of the plan and execution. This bias can unfairly punish leaders and teams whose initiatives do not go as planned, stifling innovation. To counter this, Brian Evergreen proposes examining failures through a broader lens that considers the quality of design and execution, categorizing failures into 4 types. Brian Evergreen concludes that punishing failure for any reason other than poor design and execution discour ages innovation. Conversely, well-designed and well-executed initiatives that still fail often reveal valuable insights into broader systemic dynamics that need to be addressed. Chapter 18, The Ecosystem, Surprising and Remarkable Partnerships. In this section, Brian Evergreen emphasizes the critical role of ecosystems in achieving organizational goals and adapting to market dynamics. The author argues that no single company can possess all the necessary skills and resources, making reliance on a well-functioning ecosystem essential for success. Evergreen highlights that a viable ecosystem consists of various entities, each with its own economically sustainable model and varying levels of profitability. Evergreen draws an analogy to a basketball tournament to illustrate the importance of understanding the competitive landscape. Just as Michael Jordan would be unprepared for a 5-on-5 tournament if he expected a 1-on-1 competition, organizations must recognize that they are often competing against entire ecosystems rather than individual entities. The author suggests that designing and developing an ecosystem serves not only a competitive purpose, but also helps shape market dynamics that require collaboration to achieve future objectives. To design for inevitability, Evergreen proposes that organizations envision their desired future and identify the external dynamics that could impact their ability to achieve it. These dynamics can either be managed within a collaborative ecosystem or monitored passively in the hope that they will support the envisioned future. By forming partnerships that address key market dynamics, organizations can evolve from organizational reasoning to ecosystem reasoning, where a broader future is envisioned and strategies are developed through joint investment and accountability. Evergreen outlines the steps for building an ecosystem, starting with identifying the ideal ecosystem to support the organization's envisioned future, without the constraints of existing ecosystems. The author uses the game of bughouse, chess, as an analogy, where players can pass captured pieces to their partners to create opportunities for checkmate. Similarly, organizations can assess the pieces needed to make their envisioned future inevitable and determine whether to partner with existing entities or create new ones. Brian Evergreen emphasizes that organizational ecosystems are social systems composed of individuals with diverse worldviews, values, and skills. Building an ecosystem requires orchestrating these social dynamics, driven by shared values and economic viability, to achieve a common vision for the future. Maintaining an ecosystem mechanistically, by focusing on actions rather than interactions, can be detrimental. For example, if a technology organization focuses solely on metrics, such as the number of sourced and closed deals with a consulting partner, it may overlook the underlying social dynamics that drive the partnership's success. A more effective approach involves understanding the partner organization's decision-making processes and addressing their specific needs and concerns. Evergreen shares an observation of a large organization's interest in partnering with a technology product team being turned off by the request to follow the same process as smaller partners, missing the potential to leverage their unique capabilities and perspectives. Evergreen highlights Apple as an example of systemic orchestration in the consumer market, where products seamlessly interact with each other. This kind of product ecosystem can only exist within an organization that has developed a strong internal ecosystem with surprising and remarkable partnerships. By applying the same principles of envisioning the future, identifying necessary pieces, and partnering or creating new ones, organizations can foster internal collaborations that lead to innovative solutions and market dynamics. This approach can be tested internally to refine methodologies and increase the likelihood of successfully engaging with external ecosystems. Chapter 19, Beyond Pilot Purgatory. In this section, Brian Evergreen discusses the limitations of viewing technology pilots through a purely mechanistic lens, highlighting how they are, in essence, social engagements. These engagements involve interactions between parties, where one attempts to demonstrate value to another. Unlike machine tests that hinge on performance, technology pilots depend on the interplay between those showcasing and those evaluating the technology. Evergreen explains that the pilot design itself involves social dynamics, with tensions arising from external organizations needing to outperform existing work without the internal relationships or expertise. Internal friction can also occur if the IT department is unaware of the pilot, or if the technology conflicts with the organization's strategy. Accessing and understanding data requires engagement with domain experts, business leaders, and managers, which can be complicated by attitudes like data science Taylorism, where data scientists undervalue the input of domain experts. The author points out that when organizations don't perceive a real need for a new capability, pilots become low-risk experiments with limited impact. This often leads to the pilot being a low priority, making it difficult to secure necessary support and resources. Brian Evergreen also addresses how some leaders use pilots to advance their careers by showcasing external technology investments. While this can lead to successful pilots, it also faces challenges. These include difficulties in escalating challenges, potential sabotage from peers, leadership shutting down the project, lack of broader stakeholder buy-in, and conflicts with existing organizational investments. To overcome these issues, Brian Evergreen advocates for a shift from a mechanistic view to a human-centered approach. This involves establishing an executive committee for human-centered transformation, comprising leaders from various business, industry, and technology groups, led by a C-level executive sponsor and including external voices. This committee aims to solve for the future of the industry and organization, driving organizational changes from the top down. Starting with a subset of organizational leaders determining the desired future, theories and hypotheses are formed and tested across organizations, ultimately transforming the organization's culture. This committee should evolve as the core around which the organization pivots in response to market dynamics, guided by the individuals and organizations represented within it. According to the author, this committee can initiate meaningful change at any organizational level. Chapter 20, Storytelling, Leading Social Systems. In this section, Brian Evergreen discusses the importance of storytelling in leading social systems, especially within organizations transitioning away from traditional, mechanistic structures. The author emphasizes that a leader's effectiveness hinges on their vision, and their ability to translate that vision into a compelling narrative that resonates with others. Brian Evergreen highlights that stories create shared meaning, foster belonging, and establish purpose within social systems. They serve as powerful agents of change, uniting people around common themes and inspiring action. In an organizational context, stories significantly influence behavior, impacting everything from purchasing decisions to collaboration styles and employee engagement. The author notes that with the Internet's prevalence, employees are more aware of opportunities and workplace cultures elsewhere, making a strong company narrative essential for retention and recruitment. When Brian Evergreen considered joining Underwriters Laboratories, UL, the company's history, particularly its role in ensuring electrical safety during the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, deeply resonated with the author. This story, along with UL's commitment to safety, security, and sustainability, convinced the author to join the organization and even recruit a friend. Brian Evergreen shares a personal experience contrasting the cultures at Amazon and Microsoft. A seemingly small detail, like the email notification for password updates, illustrated the different values each company emphasized. Amazon's notification included a hierarchy of leaders who would be informed if the password wasn't updated, suggesting a more intense, top-down culture. In contrast, Microsoft's notification was less hierarchical, reflecting a culture of inclusion and empowerment. This anecdote demonstrates how stories, even brief ones, can shape perceptions of powerful companies. Brian Evergreen stresses the importance of closing the story circle, where leaders communicate a vision and values, and stories from across the organization, especially from frontline workers, are shared back. This shows that leadership is attentive and values employees' contributions. Liz Foslian's research, as shared with Brian Evergreen, suggests that framing change as an experiment makes people more adaptable. Brian Evergreen emphasizes that organizational leadership teams must define and consistently communicate their values and vision. This communication needs to be adapted for different audiences, from board members to individual contributors, with managers personalizing the story for their teams. Brian Evergreen suggests investments in storytelling should go beyond executive communications to include frameworks and symbols for sharing ideas, citing Amazon's backward press release and six-pager as examples. This promotes understanding and feedback across the organization, enabling the potential of additional value. Testing for understanding immediately after communicating a vision or plan is crucial for achieving the desired future. When communicating across generational or cultural lines, stories can effectively convey the underlying message when labels fail. Brian Evergreen references Nancy Duart's framework, The Secret Structures of Great Talks, as a powerful tool for presenting the case for change. This framework involves contrasting what is with what could be to engage others in the organizational reasoning process. It also emphasizes that the audience, not the storyteller, should be the hero in business stories. When leaders frame stories around initiatives where employees are the heroes, it can spark meaningful and lasting change. Chapter 21, A More Human Organization. In the wake of the Industrial Revolution, organizations have been viewed as machines, which contrasts with the social nature of humans. A mechanistic future envisions streamlining and automation, while Brian Evergreen believes that a more human future involves humans using their skills to shape a future they desire, with machines serving as tools. Brian Evergreen emphasizes that the transition from a mechanistic to a social system's worldview is crucial, especially with the rise of autonomous transformation and the need to address societal problems. Organizations are inherently social systems, but they are not always managed as such. The elevation of empathy and the management of emotions in the workplace highlight the widening gap between these worldviews, as these concepts do not align with mechanistic systems. In this section, Brian Evergreen distinguishes between implementing advanced technologies and creating a more human future, noting that a shift from a mechanistic to a social systems approach is necessary to navigate complex organizational dynamics and the potential for technology to drive the world toward a more mechanical future. Through a social systemic lens, concepts like diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, empathy, meaning, profitable good, and talent can be better understood and prioritized. Once leaders recognize their mechanistic management style, they can begin to transition to a social systems leadership style, transforming the organizational culture into a thriving social system that advances a more human future. Brian Evergreen notes that experts in fields like psychology, neuroscience, economics, sociology, organizational design, and human resources have dedicated their careers to applying these sciences to organizational leadership and reshaping management. Resources from these experts can be found online at brianevergreen.com/booklist. Chapter 22, Autonomous Transformation Technologies, A Leader's Guide. In this section, Brian Evergreen illustrates the future of artificial intelligence, AI, through examples. In product development, AI could be used in conjunction with digital twins of factories to provide real-time feedback on the feasibility of manufacturing a product. If a proposed product design included a component that existing machines couldn't create, AI could suggest alternative designs that meet both aesthetic and manufacturing requirements. Moreover, AI could analyze Internet of Things data from factories to identify patterns of quality defects, proposing design modifications to reduce waste and improve profitability. After the product is in the market, AI could comb through defect data from sensors and cameras to correlate components with quality issues. In global logistics, AI can simulate various routes to determine the quickest and most cost-efficient path for each item. When disruptions occur, AI could reroute packages and assignments accordingly. Drones, guided by AI, could identify and potentially remove physical obstructions, such as fallen trees, without human intervention. In healthcare, AI layered on top of a digital twin of a patient's body could interact with the doctor, providing feedback on hypothetical diagnoses or treatments. For example, if a doctor suspects a patient has an iron deficiency, AI could share recent blood work results, check for iron deficiencies in the patient's familial records, and order blood work if necessary. AI could also assist in family planning by reviewing accumulated digital models to ensure the family and healthcare team monitor for likely complications based on family history. During overnight stays, the digital model of patient pain threshold, personal baselines for vital signs, comfort levels, and allergies, for example, would augment nursing capabilities to assist with reducing the load on nurses, especially in the context of staffing shortages. Proposed interventions, such as prescriptions or surgeries, could first be run in a science-based simulation of the patient to predict likelihood of success and generate insights of potential strengths and weaknesses. Brian Evergreen believes that these scenarios highlight AI's potential to enhance human expertise and extend capabilities into new areas. Chapter 23, A Deeper Dive into Artificial Intelligence. In this section, Brian Evergreen delves into the multifaceted world of artificial intelligence, starting with its historical roots in 1956 and tracing its evolution to its current prominence in modern discourse. The discussion encompasses a wide array of perspectives, from those who view AI as a potential threat to humanity to those who see it as a source of solutions to global challenges. The author breaks down the core components of AI, clarifying the often confusing terminology surrounding analytics, statistics, data science, machine learning, and autonomous AI. Brian Evergreen explains the 4 categories of analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive, and how they form an interdependent ecosystem. For example, prescriptive analytics can recommend actions based on predictions, such as suggesting temporary pricing discounts to customers likely to churn due to experience latencies. Statistics is presented as a mathematical method for performing analytics, with statisticians playing a crucial role in drawing definitive conclusions from data. Data science, defined as deriving value from data, is explored in the context of a global shortage of data scientists and various strategies to address this challenge, such as boot camps and cloud-based tools. Brian Evergreen clarifies that data scientists are analysts, statisticians, and machine learning practitioners who partner with engineers to implement AI. Decision science, a newer field, combines data science with behavioral sciences to create more meaningful and ethical analyses. Machine learning, a technique that enables computers to learn without explicit programming, is contrasted with statistics, highlighting the algorithmic approach of machine learning engineers versus the model design approach of statisticians. Generative AI, exemplified by DALL-E 2 and ChatGPT, is discussed in terms of its ability to generate new content based on learned patterns, though the author points out that it cannot replicate human traits such as ideological principles or personal expression. Reinforcement learning is presented as a method for machines to learn without historical data, using trial and error in simulated environments. Autonomous AI, distinguished by its application in high-stakes scenarios, requires complete validation before deployment. Machine teaching, a technique focused on enabling humans to teach machines, is introduced as a solution to the shortage of machine learning experts. Brian Evergreen points out that machine teaching leverages human expertise to guide reinforcement learning, as demonstrated by PepsiCo's use of it to train an autonomous agent to run a Cheetos extruder. The author differentiates between automation, which is based on pre-programmed decision trees, and AI, which involves machine learning and autonomous decision-making. Automation without AI is a script of if-then rules, while AI cannot exist without automation because it requires action based on predictions. The distinction between automation and autonomy is also clarified, with autonomy being necessary in dynamic environments where variables cannot be explicitly programmed. Brian Evergreen concludes by providing guidance on how to identify misrepresentation of AI, advising readers to apply the economic incentive test, use the 3 altitudes of inputs and outputs framework, and ask probing questions to assess the credibility and trustworthiness of advisors. This section equips leaders with the knowledge to navigate AI-related conversations, make informed decisions, and build effective data and decision science teams.
Hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.